we are learning to trust the ever-evolving rhythms of nature.
We are committed to embracing our shadow within community
and reclaiming our sovereignty.
We do this together.
That is the way.
When you're ready to begin your journey, visit elementalmovement.life. We'll see you there.
Welcome. We have Eldon, Isla, Alika, and myself, Matt, here. And we are talking today about self-responsibility in community. And so why did we feel inspired to talk about this today?
Well, so this is Eldon. The thing that comes up for me immediately is that question is asked is, so we're opening up a community container, right? And right now it's a digital community container that, long term will have offshoots in the physical. And if I'm being real, like already has offshoots in the physical because some of us get together in the flesh. And Alika, I'm looking forward to getting together with you in the flesh at some point. And so I know for myself, experiencing community containers, it is inevitable that there will be friction. It is inevitable that there will be conflict, whether that's inside of myself or between myself and somebody else. And so it feels really important to have conversations around what my responsibility is so that I know what's mine to deal with, and like within a communal agreement. It's like, I know what's mine to deal with inside of myself, but then I get together with Isla, my partner, and it's like, what I think is mine to deal with and what she thinks is mine to deal with, or might be different things, right? And so like, what's our agreement? How do we have that conversation? And so in the space that we're creating through elemental movement, it's a space where we get to like figure out how to be ourselves and like what is me in a body, in a mind, in a spirit, as a part of an ecosystem and an environment and as part of a community. And it feels really important to me to have open conversations about what responsibility looks like in that context so that it can be safe enough for me to open up.
Well said, Elton.
Thank you.
So I think that really leads to this question of like, what is it that we are creating? What is elemental movement? So it's a digital space that we're creating, a communal digital space with tools for healing and self-growth, because there are so many people out there that are on these paths of healing and self-growth. But one thing that I've noticed, and I think that the three of you have noticed as well, is that these paths that we walk in this world of self-growth and healing can be pretty individual oftentimes. They're not really done with people. You might go to retreat, you're working with a lot of people, and then it's like, okay, now I'm going and doing the work on my own, and I don't have communal support on a day-to-day basis in the work that I'm doing. And so we're trying to create this space where it's like you have that whenever you need it, not the few times you happen to be with a bunch of people all doing that stuff. There's something really magical that could happen from that. And like what you're bringing up into the space here today, Eldon, is this idea of, if we don't talk about like what are our responsibilities in this community that we're creating, things could get messy really quick. And it could ultimately like create so much like rot within the community that it festers and it dies before it really is able to support us beautifully.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'd love to add to that, Matt. This is
Please.
Ida. Like in my own self-healing or just healing and self-gnosis path and journey, you already spoke to it, Matt. It's like it's somewhat of a like individual process. And there's also this like need, this actual recognition that like I'm not an island to myself. Like I'm living amongst many other humans and I'm in constant interaction with them. So my version and experience has an impact on the people around me. And it's not, it doesn't always feel safe, like kind of being out there in these streets, kind of experiencing myself. So what I feel that elemental movement is creating space for is safety and practice to really like, one, witness others stepping into the expression of themselves, and me to also have my own experience of being witnessed as I show up as myself. And that in itself is so valuable to have that container of community to work these things that I'm personally experiencing.
Beautiful. I think I'd like to add to that too. Matt was talking about what are we responsible for, and we talked about safety and feeling safe in oneself is, I think, is like kind of an overall general skill set to have that a lot of people don't have. And then when people come into community, they get more twerked out or, triggered. And having these really basic somatic skills that most people didn't learn in school, and having this platform to teach them how to just breathe and to stay grounded and to use different muscles to feel grounded in connection and to feel their own center by feeling their core and feeling their back muscles to be able to feel supported within themselves, and to be able to orient and around the neck muscles to be able to be present and orient to the space that they're stepping into. And just having those basic somatics tools really can help someone to feel safe, because safety brings connection. So the safer someone feels, the more connected they can feel to the space in community, which is what we're doing for people. So it's a beautiful space for us to bring this platform to people that don't have that in their life.
Yeah. So I think you're getting at, Alika, that I really love, and it actually elicits this image of like a turtle, right? And like we're almost like all of us are like shelled up in our turtle shells when we're in relation with people. We're not like willing to get out of our shell a little bit because we don't feel safe, right? And so then like the capacity for connection is not as much as it would be if we really were feeling safe in that, right? And so what we're trying to do here with elemental movement is creating, we have an offering of practices that we're providing for people to work with, and then to work with them individually, but then also to interact communally around these practices. And there's both it's slowly entering you into this community, but then there's also this component of when you are practicing individually, but there's someone next to you also practicing individually, you feel more inspired to continue your practice.
Yep. I loved what you shared there, Alika, when you named like the different areas to be aware of in my body. Like I was really dropping into it in real time. And that to me highlights, or at least like brings to life, what I'm really responsible for in connection. Like kind of unconsciously, most of my life, I outsourced my safety to somebody else. Like I acted a certain way with an assumption that like this was going to like control an outcome, or this is what I needed to do in order to be safe. So someone else was responsible for my safety, which I didn't have awareness of what was going on here. So when you were starting to talk about back muscles, neck muscles, orienting in space, and like the tone and the pace that you offered it, I was able to drop into my body. And I was like, okay, this is my responsibility, not any of you. This is my responsibility. My awareness always lands here. What's actually happening right here? And when I come and move from this place that feels safe, I can be open then to connection with others. And it's like, it feels like a constant practice of having that awareness of where I'm at.
Yes, that's beautifully said, Isla. Yeah, Eldon, I wanted to just say, you started off with some really cool stuff, so I just kind of was curious if you could add on to some of the things you were saying.
Yeah, thank you. Well, as I was listening to you, Isla, and you, Alika, and sharing what you were sharing, and Matt, how you're kind of wrapping things up, like one of the things that popped up for me is just this reality, like how few of my relational containers, whether it's one-to-one, my family unit, or like bigger communities that I've been a part of, have actually had conversations about what we're responsible for. And like the physical and mental impact of that, right? It's like Alika, you share like these body cues, and Isla, you're sharing about how that's like dropping you. And I had a similar experience. I'm like, damn, that's not something that I had in my family growing up, where it was like, it's like I'm expected to act a certain way, but I'm not necessarily given all of the embodied tools to understand how to hold myself in that way, in a way that's actually safe for me and isn't just like stifling myself. And like, how many of us have experiences, and like, I'm just going to say, like, I think this is universal with everyone that I've ever met, at least. It's like, we have all learned how to make other people responsible for our safety at one time or another. Right. And then like, and in that, then we give our power away, and then we create unsafe relationships. And like, if I'm not feeling safe, any container I step into is going to have the flavor then of that lack of safety. And so like, and knowing that that's the case, like, I know that I'm going to have interactions with people where they don't feel safe and I don't feel safe. And like, that's going to come into this container too, into elemental movement. It's going to happen. And so like, as it's happening, what's our responsibility? How do we step into accountability in our physiology and in our thought processes and in the ways that we're connecting? And then how do we speak to that? And shit, let me back up a step. How do I just take care of myself in that first, right? I like, you brought that together, and so did you, Alika. And then like, having brought that together, okay, here I am, here's my body, here's my thoughts, here's my mind, here's what's happening for me right now. Now, can I be brave enough, and can the space be safe enough to actually share that with someone else who's capable of holding me in it? And then what happens next? That's like one of my favorite things. Like, what happens next? Like, when I do this thing, what happens next? Because I don't know. Like, I personally don't know what it looks like to have a large community over it, or even a small community over a long period of time that has these types of agreements set in place and conversations set in place. I have it with Isla. I have it with like Matt, like, you're a friend that I get to interact with. I feel like I have it with you. I kind of have it with one of my parents, but like, I don't know what that looks like in a bigger context. Like, what happens when we get that? Like, I'm lit up about that personally. So I just wanted to drop that in here.
I think for me, when we were talking, two things come to mind for me. And one is this idea of dignity, self-respect, and self-worth. And that takes time, you know, as we grow and we're evolving and as human beings, of knowing who we are and what we want and how we stand out in the world. It creates more safety when we do know who we are and we make mistakes and we start to learn what works for us and what doesn't work. And when we have this self-respect for the different, like, we might like something that someone else doesn't like, and how do we create a space for, I mean, what we're doing is basically creating a space for us to be our individual selves and stay in connection with other people that we might not even talk to normally. On this platform, we're going to have people that, man, I would never think I would like that person, or I would never think I would connect with that person, just because of our culture or whatever. When we do know ourselves and we do know what we like and what we don't like, we can still be authentic in the connection and have dignity and mutual connection with people that we might not be best friends with, but we can still learn and grow from this platform that we're creating.
One thing that really lights me up about this project is I've existed in two like bigger communities of my own self-interests or personal interests of movement and fitness, and then also acupuncture and like healing. And those two paths that I've walked are not too dissimilar. And I've met some really cool people on both of those paths. And in walking both of those paths, I'm like, wow, people in the movement community could really learn a lot from the people in the healing community. And people in the healing community could really mean a lot or learn a lot from the movement community. And so creating something that is, you know, functions, I mean, maybe not above, maybe not below, might be in support, might be above, but it's not surrounded around an interest or a hobby, a passion, but more of something a little more foundational. Can be really powerful because it can facilitate this like cross-pollination and these connections with people that you probably otherwise, as kind of Alika alluded to, you probably otherwise wouldn't connect with. or
Wow.
much less likely connect with. And so in that, if people can take care of themselves and make sure they feel safe within it and not you know, give away their power or take too much power, right? But find where they, if they can sit where they need to sit in it, there can be a lot of energy, like creation, right? There, a lot of
Hmm.
creation can happen, and something really magical could grow from that. And so I
Hmm.
feel like that's part of my dream with this thing that we're putting together.
Yeah, Matt, like I just, yes, everything you said. Like I guess I never really landed in this thing you brought up around like the community is not being like gathered around like a particular interest. I didn't really think of it like that, but when you said that, it just went, because like a lot of the way this society's kind of like been designed is that there's like a bit of a heavier focus on like hyper individualism, right? Like what am I into? What do I like? And I'm going to find my people. And in that sense, it's created like a segmentation. And that's okay. That's got us to this point. And there's also obviously it also doesn't work because we are highly interdependent and connected to each other. That's a more truer reality, and a reality that like we're really trying to figure out how do we do this together and care for each other, our dignity, respect each other and our differences. And so this I what you're just bringing in around coming together, that we don't have like a singular interest, is actually kind of helping us move away from this conditioning of hyper individualism that I just have like my own peeps, into something that's a fuller expression of our humanity, that we are truly connected and we're freaking doing this together. We're figuring this out together. We're creating together, and we're sharing all of our tools together to first figure out how do we safely ground in this experience together and then connect and create. So thank you, Matt, for bringing that center. I did not even like think of it like that.
I like to kind of sum it up in like one little thing is like, how do I be me fully and create a space safe enough for you to be you?
Hmm.
Mm,
That's, I think that's what we're trying to do right here, right? Like, how can we
Mm-hmm.
all be us, and then how can we create a space for everybody else to be them in an authentic way and not hold themselves back or feel shame for who they are in the world?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah, goals.
And so I think it's worth bringing in now that the way we're growing this community and the phases that we have planned. And so we have this first phase where we'll just be inviting in people that we know, we love, we care about, that we know has something to offer to this community, and to just invite them in and initiate them into this, and to grow this little nucleus to start, right? And this create this safe container that's not just the four of us. And then after that has stabilized in some capacity, we'll be inviting in a larger group of people.
You know, there's the upside and downside to everything, and the upside of community is like we got support, you get to learn, there's more creative, there's more energy, there's more flow or possibility for that. And the downside is there's, when you get a bigger community, there's going to be drama, and
Mm-hmm.
how do you deal with the drama in the community? And I that's why I when Eldon started off with this of having being, you know, this self-responsibility piece in community, how does that look? How are we going about doing that? How are we building that? And I think that's a very foundational thing that you were talking about, Matt, that we need to establish, so that if someone's coming in here, there is some ground rules of how to be in this space respectfully.
Yeah. So I mean, what it brought up for me when you mentioned that is that, you know, when drama arises in something, it's like, well, first, instead of looking out, I should be looking in first.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yes.
okay, I feel drama. Like, okay, where's my role in this drama? And sorting, feeling into what part of this is mine, what can I own into? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if I've resolved that drama within myself, all of a sudden we've already, you know, settled down a large portion of that drama if it's between two people
Yeah,
or between
and I
a
love that,
collection
and
of
you're
people.
very super resourced and have a lot of tools. And
Yeah.
most normal people wouldn't be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't do it all the time either.
Thanks for being honest.
Yeah.
Well, I do it all the time. I always do it.
No, you
Sounds
don't.
better.
No, I don't. No, I don't. So one of the things that popped up for me a couple of times now, so I want to name it. So there's this ongoing conversation about safety and like creating a community where we have generative safety, meaning like we have safety that's being generated by the people that are in it, in the community. The four of us right now, we've been doing that with varying degrees of success in different contexts, and now we're going to invite more people in. It's like, how do you all know when you're safe and when you're not in
Right.
your bodies?
Exactly.
Great
That's actually,
question.
that's actually a question. Yeah, I want to like hear everybody's.
So for me, the biggest indication, and this is when like I know I'm properly fucked. Like I've really like let myself get very, very unsafe. And I feel like my sacrum tighten up. And I feel like it's like the whole like L4, L5 all the way to like my coccyx is like shut down. And I just feel it like almost being squeezed. It's like there's no flow down there. So that's when it's like really bad. But there's, also it can get some like tightness in my chest. Like it's hard to take a deep breath. So those are some very bad signs for me. That's like, oh, I have like let myself I have not spoken up for way too long. But even before that, indicate like lighter indications will be like, am I breathing through my mouth or am I breathing through my nose? Right. If I'm more leaning towards nasal breathing, I'm probably much safer. How fast I'm moving through a space. If I'm moving slower, how I'm walking is a good indication. If I'm really going heel to toe gracefully, it's like, oh, I'm feeling pretty safe right now. If I'm kind of shifting more into the balls of my feet, unless I'm like out playing basketball or something, it's like that's an indication that I'm not feeling very safe. The pace of my voice is another one. There's all these little cues that if I like have a little awareness around it, like checking in, and that's where I'll just go on a little tangent before I kind of close it down. That's where the zero form practice has been so integral to my development of my awareness of my safety, because it's kind of, when I get into the zero form practice, I'm like inherently safe. I'm out in nature. I'm almost certain there's no predators around me. No one's around, and I'm really just connecting with like, where is my 0 point? Where do I start, and where I can go out from there, and I can feel like, okay, this is what it feels to just be at my 0 point. And so then when I'm out in the world, I'm doing stuff, it's like, okay, I'm not there anymore. How far am I from there?
You hit a lot of points there, Matt.
Sorry.
How do I follow that?
Just tell people how you feel safe. How do you know when you feel safe or not?
So for me, one of the it's like this feeling of frozenness, like when I'm stuck, there's an energy coming at me and I'm just like frozen, and then I go into masking. So like I mask, I hide what I'm really feeling, and then I just try to match the person's, like I try to kind of assume what the person needs from me. I won't go into a fight or anything like that. I like really just go into fawn. That's sort of like my disposition. Unless like, I see like a child like or potentially being harmed, and like that usually kind of picks me up. But like in a conflict, or if someone's saying something to me or doing something that I'm super uncomfortable, like the frozen energy. When I feel safe, I feel really confident. I feel really relaxed in my body. I feel like I could move my body. I have like I have such a creative mind, a visual way of seeing the world. Those things are just flowing through. When I'm like hearing someone, I could see things and I could speak to those things like very openly and freely. And the natural like emotions that want to come out of me and reactions that want to come out of me, whether they're like proper or not, they just come out because I'm in myself. I feel comfortable. I feel childlike in a sense. So when I'm not in that childlike kind of sense or disposition, then I'm probably feeling a little unsafe, a little bit tight, closed off, like I need to take care of this person's experience just so I could stay okay.
I mean, I could just add to really simply from what Anna was saying. For me, like if I feel really safe, I feel free to share. Like I can get more in the flow. I feel like this free flow of thought. I feel in this free flow space, and I have this sense of in my body where I'm just landed. And but at the same time, I feel this lightness in the groundedness where I can be more in this expansive state, but also feeling grounded. It's kind of this hard to describe this feeling of expansion and groundedness in myself when I'm feeling safe in connection with somebody else. It says I think it's like kind of like when you go to have tea or coffee and just have a talk with somebody, and then you're like, it feels like 5 minutes and it was like 3 hours, and you're like, holy cow. So for me, that's kind of the sense of when I feel safe in connection with somebody.
And so to get you back to Eldon's question, when do you know you're not feeling safe? Like what are the indications?
Well, I think kind of similar, same things what you guys are saying. Tension in my body, feeling more in touch with fear in my body, which usually causes tension. My breath gets more shallow, not breathing, coming more into the fight or flight space. And those are usually in certain circumstances where usually if I'm arguing with my partner, those are the kind of the places I go to. Usually in community, I'm pretty resource. It's just more of like my closer connections that touch into these places that my more wounded, traumatized places that from my childhood of when, if someone's yelling really loud, and sometimes my partner will get loud, then I'll get more protective. So that's kind of one of the places of where I'll get tense and I'll get tight. My breath will get, slow down. And then I'll just go into my thinking mind, my analytical mind, and not really feeling. So I could be very dry and very direct and to the point with no feeling, and that just triggers my partner more, and then I get more protective and more disassociated, I would say.
You brought something up there that I think is really important to bring into this space about when we aren't feeling safe and we then go into that, like first we're like in the brainstem, fight, flight, freeze, whatever it is. And then we kind of go into that thinking mind, and that thinking mind, the foundation of where we're thinking is that like fight, flight response. And like for me, I will then start to rationalize my own behaviors and think about how someone else's behaviors that have affected me and made me feel unsafe, how they fucked up, right? How it's their fault. Right. And I think from what I've experienced, most people, this is how a lot of people have that. You think about that. And instead of like then like rewinding, right? Talk about the body knot and connecting with the sensations rather than the feelings or the thoughts that are framed from those feelings and sensations. But going back to the sensations and really feeling into them, like, oh, I feel really unsafe right now. And then taking care of those sensations and those uncomfortable feelings. And then from there, once I'm resolved in that, then allowing myself to analyze the situation from a place of safety.
Exactly.
Yep. So important to know what your triggers are. And sometimes if you don't know, it's that practice of understanding what the sensations in your body, like the discomforts that are responding to a trigger. And it feels really foundational. And I want to kind of weave Eldon in here because that's something that we talk about a lot, is just like when we both are triggered about something, it's like, okay, so what are you feeling? And it's practice for both of us to sort of just start to name the physical sensation before we even go into the story. We don't always hit that mark. But, in that, I find that it provides a little bit more compassion for the experience versus that conflict that really wants to keep going in like that. Like there's, it's harder to get to that resolution place.
I want to jump in and just share about like my own experience of like lack of safety in my system, along with everything that y'all already said. I want to like, so there's this thing that happens for me where everything speeds up, feels really fast, like there's a rushing, and I tend to feel like some vibration happening in my body. And like Alika, you mentioned like kind of like coming up into the head. It's like same thing. It's like when I'm really not feeling safe, I'm very in my head. I'm like kind of dissociated from my body. And when that happens, typically I get bigger. Like there's a feeling of getting bigger, which would be like kind of like moving towards that fight response for me. And so like part of, and I want to name here too, we've all layered in like a bunch of different things that we know and we feel, and like, and I want to name is like we worked to be able to understand these things, right? This isn't something that just happened. This is something that's like, and I, at least for myself, like I'm still doing this work. I'm still learning how to how to see my charge coming up. And it's like an active practice. And that's where like the body listening form is like, is my personal practice of tuning into what's happening in my physiology and in my psychology, in my mind, to be able to recognize when my charge is building. And then having like tools like some of the breathwork tools that you've offered, Alika, and like the zero form practice, like these tools to be able to work with the charge that's here, clear it, stabilize it, whatever. And Isla, you just brought in this piece. When I get to a certain point in my charge, I can't talk about it. Not in a way that will be relational. Like the charge is too much. Like I can't get myself all the way out of the story. I've disconnected from my body. I'm up in my head. I'm not safe to talk to in that context.
Yeah.
I got to go sit down in the grass outside for a bit. I got to go do some breath work. I got to remove myself and go work with my body physiology and like what's here before I can come back in and have like a mature, safe conversation, right? And like that's my responsibility. Because if I don't do that, I'm going to keep getting bigger. And then like whoever's around me is going to feel the threat of my lack of safety and react in whatever way they react to that. And it's just like, it's just not good. Like it's not a relational way to do things. It's not the way that I want to do things with the people that I love or the people that I'm like really connected to. And so anyway, that just felt like important to name it. Alika, it sounded like you were going to say something before I hopped in here.
Oh, no, that was good. I'm glad you went to that. I just wanted to add to what you're just saying. Very simply kind of a tool that I use to kind of just check in with myself, and it's just red light, yellow light, green light. You know, when you're just talking to, when you're in green light, you're feeling good, you're feeling connected, you're feeling all that. When you're in yellow light, your nervous system's getting more activated, and once you're in yellow light, that's the time to be like, okay, hey, how's my breathing, how am I feeling, all these things you were just talking to Eldon. Because when you're in red light, you're already gone, you're already doing your protective thing, and that's not being responsible, right? So that's kind of the responsibility for people if they want to stay in connection and be in dignity and not be in fight or flight. It's managing and regulating the green light, yellow light.
Yeah. And so to tie this in to just elemental movement and what we're doing, there's a lot of magic that can be created through a container like what we're creating when a lot of people are in that green light space, right? That's that's a space of creation. But like a community's role also is to help support people in getting back into that space if they've left it, right? And so there needs to be an honoring of when people aren't getting there and need a little support. And some of that is the educational practices that we're sharing, but other parts of it is just sometimes you need someone to talk to help work it out too, right? You need to be in communication with someone, and you can't be in communication with a lot of people at that point, right? That's going to get really messy. But maybe a trusted source.
That's part of the things we talked about, right? The safe people.
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to toss one more thing in here, right? Like I love the green yellow, red lights. It's just like
Dang.
such a classy way to be able to work with the charge with that visual. And one thing that I want to put in here, we're talking about like the magic of green light and like the need to be able to like work with yellow light. And I want to just toss in here is like, I want access to my red light when it's time. And like
Yeah.
that red light exists to keep me alive and safe.
Yes,
And so like,
exactly.
how do I honor that? But then also like not confuse my argument with my partner as a life or death situation, or my like
Yeah.
not agreeing with something that someone else has said politically, spiritually, economically, like whatever, as being like a red light situation. It's like, that's not the time for red light. It's not it. And if I don't know how to navigate green and yellow, then like I don't have access to being able to choose, this is not the time for red. My nervous system is just going to get flared up. I'm like, it's done that, right? It's like we've all been there. And so how to like, I just want to honor that. I want to be
Hmm.
careful not to stigmatize red light. There's a
Sure.
time and a
Totally.
place.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hell yeah.
I like being a whole human. Another thing I
Mhm.
want to say to that, Eldon, too, was just like this. I absolutely agree that like creation point is when we're in green light. And it's not always going to be like that. So in community, when we do experience a red light, this community is agreeing to like be resourced together to move through it together. And that what we learn in this community space will have a direct impact with the communities outside of the community space we're in.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that's that ripple effect in this like wider like life experience, this wider community, that there's going to be red lights all the time, but we are building tools, capacity, resource, and safety in elemental movement to practice these things,
Hmm.
experience what it's like to move out of red into yellow into green together.
Exactly.
And we can share that with someone else outside
Yeah,
of
Hmm.
you bring up such a great point, Isla, because so much of our world now, because we're so interconnected and we have so many options, there's so many people. When we experience red lights, so often it's like, all right, peace. I'm out.
Yeah.
I'll go find someone else, like
Yeah.
other people. It's not
Yeah.
worth my
Agree with
time,
me.
not worth my
Screw
energy.
you.
You know?
You're not a human to me anymore. See ya.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are we missing out on by
Mm.
not walking through that challenging piece together and like
Hmm.
resolving those conflicts and
And that
getting
might not
back
mean
into it?
us being together still, and that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
But moving, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't want to cut you off, but
No, 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 you're not at all. Continue.
yeah, it feels like self-responsibility and community means like, all right, I'm not gonna like just outright dismiss your humanity and like, fuck you, red light, I'm out. But okay, let's move through this together. And that might mean like this relationship as it is needs to change, or it needs to kind of close off and we need to go our separate ways, that kind of thing. Not necessarily like a bad thing or a good thing, but like we're moving and healing this together, regardless of what that means for both of us at the end.
Yes. I want to add to that. One simple thing is Eldon was talking about agreeing and disagreeing. And one beautiful thing that I try to live in is about, can we agree to disagree and still be in loving connection?
Right.
Like you might like the freaking Lakers and I might like the Warriors, but can we still be friends?
Nope, we're done. We're done.
or
That's
or
it.
You're
or
dead
for
to me.
instance, like you're a Christian and I'm a Buddhist. Can
Mhm.
we still be friends? Oh, you don't believe in Jesus, so I'm gonna kill you. I mean,
This is
that
what we're
doesn't really
dealing
work.
with, right? This is what we're dealing
Yeah,
with.
exactly.
Oh.
This is what the problem with the world is. Well, one of, because if we can't agree to disagree, then we can't be friends. And then that creates drama.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, and in the drama, there's a triangle where there's a hero, right, a villain. Who's the third one?
Perpetrator.
The perpetrator.
Yeah.
We just keep
Oppressor.
going, just keep doing that.
Yeah.
I think we've hit most of the points that we wanted to. Is there anything else anyone feels needs to be added to this conversation before we close it out?
Yeah, I feel like there is. I think we have like spoken to everything, but I just kind of want to reiterate a couple of things in this community. One of the things that like I'm calling in as my personal intention that I think is mirrored by the collective, and please feel free to correct me if I'm in speaking out of turn, is to create community where we are actively taking responsibility for our body physiology, our thoughts, our feelings, our actions, and our words together. And when disagreement comes up, it's like we get to speak to, I don't agree, and to do so in a way that remains in integrity or maintains the integrity of our safety and our dignity and the safety and dignity of other people. So it's not you are wrong, it is I disagree. And then like if we can can we have a conversation about it? Is it safe enough, right? Like that type of thing where it's like our safety is actually the thing that we are like the most, so my safety and your safety, all your all safety, like that's what I'm here to uphold in this community. And like I'm gonna fuck up, I'm gonna make mistakes, and so when I do, like tell me.
Yeah, you got to hold each other accountable, right?
Yeah.
Speak up.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if you don't feel safe enough to speak up, who, to the person, whoever it is, right, who can you speak up to, right? Who is your person that's safe enough to be able to speak to, so you can like rebuild that sense of internal safety to be able to stand in community. And like I feel like that's what we're all here for, right? Like in various different contexts with different words. I feel that in each of you.
Yes. And I think to add to what you're saying, which helps people, is to, before, let's say you have some conflict resolution you want to do with somebody and you're disagreeing on something, it's better to start with where you do connect and where you do agree on. Like, okay, hey, you know, what the things you value, like you value family. Okay, yes, I value family. Do you value respect? Yes, I value respect. Then we build this, you know, some connections, and then we can start to work on these things that are more difficult, since we have some things we do see eye to eye. And I think that's an important piece to bring to the table when we're agreeing to disagree with somebody, that there are places where we do agree. And let's stay with that, while we, you know, we might not see eye to eye on this one topic, and that's okay. You like Trump, I don't. It doesn't mean you're the worst person in the world, for instance.
Okay, so Alika, what you just said is like so perfect and centered me. So thank you. Help me find a center that I want to talk to. Part of what I feel like we're doing, and you mentioned this in one of our conversations recently, Alika, is like creating a common language. So that's right. Like by coming into this community and like working with what's here, like we are creating points of mutuality and points of connection, points of agreement that then give us a common ground to be able to like see where we can go. Like I don't know where we're gonna go, but we're going somewhere, and it's gonna be different than where we've been.
We're going someplace better. That's my opinion, and we can agree to disagree on that. But